Well, hi, there you are. Welcome to my garden. Today's my birthday, and I'm 60 years old, and I've got some insights to share with you about gardening. Some people might get a little frustrated, but I think you won't be after you listen to this. You have to forgive me, here in northeastern Oklahoma, zone 7A-B, depending on what map I'm looking at. Right now it's a little over 100 degrees static. It's August. It's summer. It's hot. It always is. But let me go ahead and water this while we talk. A bit earlier this month, we went ahead and put in quite a few seeds. You know, we can call that our fall garden, or we can call it our late summer garden. One of the insights that I found, and I wish I would have known 50 years ago, is the ground wants to stay covered. And right here's a great example where we pulled the mulch back. We got grasses and weeds trying to grow in here. We need the carrots to get a little bigger before we can mulch back in there. One thing I learned about the deep mulch is wherever it's mulched heavy, it retains a lot of the moisture, so you don't really have to water. But anywhere you have new stuff, you really do need to pay attention and make sure you got water in on them. Here's one other thing about watering. You do not water across the deep mulch and think you're watering the ground. The deep mulch will in the summer act like a thatched roof, and it might go down in a little bit, but it's not going to get into that soil. So when you're watering, and I've talked about this before, you want to water right at the base of the plants. That works well on tomatoes, so you're not getting the leaves wet. And that's the only way you're going to assure that the plants get water right at the roots. And when you're going to do that, you want to water that heavily. Now the mulch that's around will hold that moisture in. But yeah, you do not want to come out with your hose or your watering can and water across the top of your mulch. You're just wasting your water. That was a hard lesson to learn, but it's a really good one to keep in mind. See, and it can be frustrating. This is one of my favorite peppers, and it's just about there, but something's eating on this. I think we got a worm up in here. But if you know that you got critters that eat in your garden and you anticipate that, that's something you can deal with. And after 50 years, if there's one thing I know, there's a ton of critters that like to eat what we like to eat. You're just about ready to harvest, you come out and you find these bugs just eating away. Last year we got infested with the striped blister beetles. This year we've got the black blister beetles. These gray ones, they're the females, and the little black ones, they're the males. We've been battling those all summer. There's a few plants they really like. They like the Swiss chard, they like the beet leaves, they like the amaranth leaves. Then they'll move on to the tomatoes. They really like the potatoes. They've pretty much decimated our potatoes this year. But with some neem oil and soap, it does do them in. And we're just staying after them. These are the kinds you don't want to really pick off with your fingers, because they will blister you. But I know we're going to have critters, and we just take the proper measures. Let's say a few words about companion planting. Now, we planted chives in here next to these peppers, and this is a pretty healthy pepper plant. We also planted marigolds with the tomatoes, and I planted peppers, cowpeas, turmeric, all in the same area. But I also planted the same amount all around the garden. Since this isn't a market garden and we're not trying to sell this stuff, I can spread it out across the entire garden. That way if I get pests in one area, they're not going to decimate the entire garden. And I think I'm going to have to eat some cake here in just a minute. I did want to give you a couple insights, especially what I've learned about the deep mulch. We're coming on our 5th summer, and you see most of the results that we have. They're pretty good. We've had some failures. We've got to be careful with the deep mulch. You need to put it in at least 4 inches thick or thicker. It takes time for your soil to attract the right kind of bacteria and fungus that are beneficial to your plants. Now, if you put it in 4 inches thick and it packs down and it becomes anaerobic, you can actually be hurting your garden, promoting the wrong kind of bacteria and fungus, bringing disease into your garden. So you got to be really careful about that. Oh, it looks like I'm going to be picking beans tomorrow. Not doing it tonight. These can get a little bigger. Well, not this one. That's why we do it, because it tastes great. I think you might be able to see the cabbage now. Got purple and green and a couple little amaranth coming up. But there again, this mulch is very thin and the ground wants to stay covered. Spinach is doing fine back here. Now with some of the lessons that we've learned, containers and raised beds and mulch are just a little different. If you mulch your plants in a container, it will help hold some of the moisture. It's still going to need to be watered almost every day because that container's out of the ground. It's like an oven cooking it. You are going to have to feed that container more because it's not connected with the life in the soil, and that plant will go ahead and use what's in that container. It's the same thing with raised beds. If you're using a raised bed that's up off the ground, you're basically doing the same thing as a container except a little bigger. And the heat does kind of cook that out. And you also got to watch out for feeding it. But you do want to put the mulch on. Now if you're doing the kind of raised bed where it's just a border, that's basically deep mulch on the ground. And that works the same way as it does here in the garden. You have to continually add to it. You want to make sure it doesn't get packed down and turn anaerobic. I don't know if our ladybugs got here in time to save the cucumbers, but we got some really nice growth on the ends of these and we're getting flowers coming on. Here's the deal, if you don't sow, you can't grow. I can't have another harvest of cucumbers unless I plant. The beans are coming on really well. We got new beans in the ground, and you can do this too. And the best weapon you have in the garden is knowing what you can face. The one constant you're always going to have is everything changes all the time. But there's always bugs. There's always heat. You always have to make sure they're watered. You always want to make sure you got air. Example, you got snails. You're going to have snails. They move a long way. So even if I got rid of all the snails out of the garden, they would come in from the woods. So I've got a really safe snail bait, but I also have beer traps, and I also know they're going to come. So I keep an eye out for them. Late in the evening, we come out here. If we start getting a bunch of snails, we put down more bait. We put out more beer traps. Some years we have Japanese beetles, some years blister beetles, some years the other blister beetles. You just got to know what you're going to have. But you can also bring in ladybugs for your aphids. I think we're going to try lacewings next year. I think we're also going to try some bug cloth. Because on your brassicas, you're going to get worms. You're just going to get worms. So you either spray it with BT or you cover it. And even doing all that, you're still going to have some holes in your outer leaves. So knowing what you can face makes facing it not so difficult. And then you get to enjoy the garden where you got tomatoes 7 feet in the air. I need to get to the house because I think those birthday candles might cause a fire. There's 60 of them after all. If you want to learn some more about the deep mulch, click that link right there and I'll meet you right back in the garden. If you want to learn about the living soil, click that link and I'll meet you right back in the garden. And until next time, remember, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and God bless you. Come on, let's plant.
Let's go plant garden.